This is John Gilroy from the Federal Tech Podcast.
This is Rob St. Martin from Akamai.
Today, we're going to talk about applying innovation to improving federal cybersecurity. Hit the music, Manny.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. In the virtual studio today, we have Rob St. Martin, AVP Public Sector at a company called Akamai, A-K-A-M-A-I. And Akamai has been making a lot of news in the last 4 or 5 months. I thought we'd bring someone who's an expert in federal systems and talk about a wide range of topics. We're going to have a smorgasbord of topics. I'm just going to pop these questions out at you, Rob, and see if you can handle it. Do you reckon you can handle it?
Well, I'm going to give it a go. Let's see how it ends up.
Yeah, give it a go. Yeah. In case you haven't figured this out, but Akamai has been very, very busy in the federal marketplace. Lots of webinars, lots of events, and more people are seeing their name. And they cover so many different aspects of federal IT that we have to maybe segment them. So I guess the first kind of pillar, the first area I want to get into is staffing. You know, the phrase that's used is woefully inadequate. I think we all know there's like a 400,000 shortage of staff for cybersecurity experts, but in the federal government, it's extremely problematic because they can't hire people. So where does Akamai fit in this? Is Akamai fill them up with people, or where do you stand with helping this staffing shortage?
John, we believe with the platform and the technology that we bring to the table, we can augment the staffing shortage through technology. As the equation comes up relative to trust the technology so that it can do more things for you that requires less human time to process and look at. We believe we're in a unique spot that we can put solutions in place that help the government staffing in that area.
So what happens is you may not have to hire another person if you can automate some systems, but it has to be kind of carefully, I would imagine. Is that right?
100%. And it has to be in coordination with what the mission is and all of the other technologies and integrators that are in play, right? This is not a unique, we show up and we're by ourselves. Everything needs to fit across the board, I believe, regardless of the technology within the ecosystem to contribute to the good of the whole.
Well, Rob, compared to me, you're kind of a young puppy. Back when you were in high school, I was learning all about networking and dotted quad and subnets and all this technical stuff that was really, really detail oriented. And today I start reading about something called microsegmentation. I'm saying, it's an old concept that's playing a new area here. And so people say that microsegmentation can reduce this infiltration concept, East and West movement. Is this new? Is this old? Or what's this microsegmentation? I mean, is this just a repackaging of some old concept?
No, I don't think that it's new, but I think that adoption is coming up the curve relative to segmentation or microsegmentation. As granular as you would like to deploy segmentation as a customer, it's going to give you the results, hopefully, that's going to yield what you're looking for. The things that have changed in segmentation over the past couple of years, in addition to adoption, is discovery. I believe that our deployment and our product is doing a superior job now to discovery to let you initially identify where your problem areas might be, because you're really unable as a human to see all of the egress points that might cause you a situation. So then now that you know more about where the potential areas are, the detection and the mitigation has also improved. One of the things that is most improved, and it's the one that everybody cares about, is speed to detection or quarantining. So when there is something that goes awry that you do not want to happen, if you have microsegmentation or segmentation deployed in those areas, it's seen what the normal course of business is. It detects a variation to that you've identified as something that you need to look at, and then it shuts it off and it mitigates the issue relative to the that it could have to your operating or to your deployment.
Back when I was taking all those tests with the MSSP and all those silly names,
right?
I always thought of a network as you'd see a computer, Rob's computer, John's computer, Randy's computer, and that's a network. But you're not talking about physical entities or nodes. You're talking about services when you say discovery, right? You're discovering services.
Correct. Services and access. And again, you're also ingesting services from trusted other parties. And you have some implied upstream trust there that might or might not reveal itself when the information actually gets into your center, and then you might want to stop it for whatever reason. The services, that's 100% correct.
Yeah, it's a brave new world here.
Yeah.
Your company's been doing all kinds of podcasts and webinars and seminars here, and I was lucky enough to listen to one of your colleagues, a guy named Tony Lauro, and guy's been in the trenches, been beat up. He's a good experience here. He says a lot of very practical things. Some things may ruffle some feathers, but he says some very practical things, and I'm going to quote him, and you can tell me if he's off base or if he's on point or what. In this one podcast, he said that extract overprivilege that has been given over the past few years. He says, it sounds like a political comment, that there's been a lot of overprivileging going on with permissions. Is that true?
It really is. And Tony's a great spokesman for Akamai and helps us out quite a bit here in the public sector. So that overprivileged piece, right, John? It's really addressed in the name that everybody has been pursuing for the years, which is zero trust. Right before, we used to give all of the trust, and now we're shifting to the trust and verify or zero trust. So that granularity in permission is now very manageable in the enterprise, where before it was not. So that was the first impediment. They couldn't do it. Now you can do it. And that improvement makes a world of difference. The other thing that either helps or hinders privilege is procedures and compliance. So the technology has a tendency to change faster than procedurally or compliance can. And there's also lots of human factors into what agencies or enterprises are willing to tolerate relative to compliance or procedures, whether it be for technical reasons or whether it be for ease of work use. So those things factor in, but that overprivilege, we've gone from everybody has all to now it's being compartmentalized going, and that Tony's 100% correct, right? That is one of the big factors in being able to manage your posture, your footprint out there, exposure on the web.
Yeah, it's one thing to toss out the word zero trust, but then actually to sit down with some network engineers and systems and try to actually deploy it and put it in system. It gets kind of difficult here. One of the big hangups that I've seen over the years is not necessarily the technology, not necessarily the speed of the network, but maybe it's got something to do with users. And our friend here, Tony, said something in this same podcast. He had a double here. He had a double. He said that, security has to work despite the users. And so if we have some idiot like John Gilroy trying to do something wrong in a system, it can't be manually. It has to be automatically shut down or changed, doesn't it? I mean, you got to protect yourself from yourself. It's almost like having a 3-year-old.
It really does. And you've already heard me say this once today. Agencies and enterprises are getting more and more trustworthy of the technology, because the technology has capabilities that inevitably are not used, right? We all use a fraction of what our cell phone can do for us. Well, same with the technologies that are deployed, right? There are certainly some areas that get pushed to their limits, but there are other areas that don't get facilitated where they could be. Governance here also plays a part, because we operate in a world in the federal government where access gets judged externally if it's not perfect. If somebody's supposed to have permission and they don't get permission, or somebody gets blocked accidentally. So those things shape the human decision that starts to look at the individual user access to things. And that's where things start to get a little fuzzy. So whether it's mitigated to some degree or you trust the technology more, that's a dance that probably will never end. But that's a piece where it comes into where Tony says, right, that the people are in the way and they're part of the problem. And that's where I think it lies.
Let's focus on these people again. During COVID, many people had to start working remotely, and people were up against the wall. They had to look on the shelf and just grab something that works. And what works? Well, VPN, bang, grab, it works. It did work. And to tell you the truth, there was a big transition that was made. Now, what happens is after a field expedient is used, then people like Rob and Tony sit back and go, oh, what could possibly go wrong here? And so the idea of VPN might have been great in 2000 when there's an emergency, but there seems to be a whole shift now away from that. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, you had the VPN craze. Then there was no option, right? That's what people had to do. They had to staff up and they had to create access, and that was the right technology at the right time to get that done. VPNs probably a little more porous by themselves when they're not coupled with other types of technologies to manage access for people that are coming in and out. And really, when you're talking VPN and when you're talking the other subjects that we've talked about, your identity and how that gets credentialed is the front door and the key, the first key to all of this, right? When the burglar comes and knocks on the door, there needs to be some tests to understand who that burglar is. And to take it further, in the Akamai world, we don't want that burglar knocking on the door, right? Which is that VPN access right into your center. We want to stop that burglar at the mailbox that's out in the front yard, or maybe some traffic signals that are further down the road, so that we have the opportunity to defend and perfect the user or the entity that's looking to come in and interact with you. So we try to push that out and look at it that way.
Would your company like to help out women in technology? Well, do I have an event for you? It's called Bike for Your Beer. October 11th, 2023, we assemble at Carasoft, ride our bikes out to Caboose Brewing, get a t-shirt, some pictures with women in technology, and maybe even a beer. You get it all. Exercise, photos for your company website, and meet potential partners. 100% goes to women in technology. For more details, go to bikeforyourbeer.com.
Rob, we mentioned COVID. Well, we're in a post-COVID world. I'm going downtown doing more and more events. And I can pretty much predict that if I went to an event tomorrow and I talk with a bunch of federal CIOs or technology leaders down there, they would use the big three, speed, availability, security. That's what I want. Give us all three. Well, there's speed, there's security, and there's availability. And maybe there's the balance there. I want to get a car that's reasonably priced, but I want to get good mileage, but it has to seat 6 people, but it has to get, it has to air connect. And so there's a push and pull here between, we can unplug all the systems, get absolute secure, but how do you balance this ease of use with security?
Yeah, and all three are table stakes. There's
want them all.
Yeah, there's never a conversation that says, yeah, give us these two, but not this one. And up until as of recent, speed and availability was it for the longest time. And historically, if I reflect, for me, it all started to change in 04, 05. I think that was the year. 04 was when the federal government got attacked over 4th of July weekend. And there were several agencies that were down for days, the White House being one of them. So speed at that point all of a sudden became less important. So what I see in the marketplace is availability and security lead the parade. And the conversation seems to be shifting to a secure experience. So the availability and the speed kind of can go hand in hand. And which is most important to you? And in almost all situations, security is most important, because it's not just for, am I not able to get some .com public, brochureware, or am I doing something on the FAFSA education site where I have people's information and things start to matter? It's not just that front-facing piece, but is that, on the back end, if something comes in that's not supposed to be in my house, what are the ramifications and how can I mitigate that from happening to not cause myself other problems? And again, the granularity of what is the application or thing that we're serving and who is the user. So we are active in deployments now where, just again, continuing down the zero trust path, everybody doesn't have the same access and everybody doesn't have the same privileges. So the speed that they get or the availability they get might not be as critical as the people that need to get into those highly secured areas. We're going to make sure they're getting in and that their experience is very consistent. Consistent experience will get traded off sometimes a little bit for speed. And John, when I say traded off for speed, it's not speed you or I are going to notice. They're measuring this with a clock that we can't even assimilate to. So that conversation is really migrated, and security with a consistent experience. And it's reasonable to think that you'll trade off a little bit of speed, other than FAA holding some auctions, and the SEC making sure that the financial reports get out at a specific time, or the WASD report from the FAA gets posted on the second Tuesday of each month at 12 noon sharp, no ifs, ands, or buts. The speed piece kind of wanders a little bit in the equation right now, so the other two lead the parade.
Well, earlier you mentioned speed, availability, and security. Well, I don't want to cause headaches here, but a recent executive order talked about, drum roll please, user experience. So now it's got to be fast, got to be available and secure. And oh, by the way, it's got to be a good user experience. And I think when people think of user experience, they think of maybe HTML and design and maybe speed of the site. But many times user experience has got to do with maybe the speed of authenticating or validating a user, or the speed of accessing resources on different networks. And so this user experience is kind of important. In fact, your colleague, Randy Young, he said that one way to accomplish this is to abstract complexity and simplify all aspects of this experience. And so where Akamai really ostensibly is a very, very technical type of a company, it boils down to more and more you providing a good user experience for citizens or for other government people using a site. So user experience is coming more and more forefront, isn't it?
It is. And, whether it's citizens or whether it's the DIB or whether it's other subcontractors and or, third parties that are contributing or utilizing cooperation with the government. It's a tricky one, John. In our personal lives, if every time we clicked the button on Amazon, it took 5 seconds to render an answer, and that's what it was every time, we'd be happy with that because it's consistent, it's predictable, and it's the same every time. Now, what Randy was talking about, when you're trying to abstract something, people use different federated credentialing to get people into the system and then connect to the system and then make that tie. So all of those things add some duration and inconsistencies, and then there's situational pieces that come out. So I believe in general that the consistency of the experience is pretty good relative to Akamai, right? We are built to map and navigate around problems so that the experience is consistent. And then so we can eliminate some of the technical penalties that are in there relative to time from what people are doing just in general. But it's the complication of all of those facets. We've kind of been touching on it in the pieces. And then here we go. Now we get to the human component of it, which is, what is the compliance and the regulation? Thou shalt only do this. We're only willing to let in this amount of traffic, per periods of time. So no matter how fast you can do things, all of a sudden you're going to have an experience hit if there's a surge of something for the reason that is not a technology reason, right? It's something that's in there.
Yep.
So that conversation goes on, and I'm always going back to the, to the customer and says, hey, what is it that matters? Let's prioritize from there and work backwards, because that's the one that needs to be at the top of the heap and have that unfettered and hitchless experience.
Yeah, frictionless is what people say. Unfettered is good too.
I couldn't come up with that word. Yeah, frictionless is the right word.
Earlier I mentioned a 3-year-old because I have a 3-year-old grandson. He's a great kid, like all grandsons are. They're perfect and they're great. They're not good at sharing, though. Just not good at sharing. It's his toy, it's his food, it's his ice cream, whatever it happens to be. So let's apply this to the federal government and cybersecurity threats. We know there are some federal mandates, and we can list them, that talk about sharing threat information. Now, Akamai, it's in the catbird seat. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Akamai, and it really sees a lot. I think you guys see like 1/3 of the whole internet that you see every day. Yeah. And so where does this? I want to leave with this. And what about threat sharing? I mean, where is it fair and not fair? If you share a threat, is that going to make a federal agency vulnerable? If agency A is locked down, agency B is vulnerable, if you share that threat, is agency B going to be in trouble? Or what about threat share? It seems like you got to hire people with ethics degrees at Akamai to figure this out. I haven't. What's the answer here? How do you share threat information?
So let me explain how we deal with it as a company. So we as a company, we take the threat data that we see on our network, anonymize it, and then as there's a mitigation strategy for it, it gets deployed so customers that are on our network can take advantage of it. So we don't need to tell them who saw the threat or to what degree it affected them or not. This is a known threat. We'll put it out there and mitigate it. So as someone's going to take the 0-day attack, always. And then the rest of the customers out there, known to them, because that's one of the reasons they do business with Akamai, to get that benefit that we're seeing more than just what they see, right? We're looking at a broader spectrum. So switch now to the government. The government does a great job sharing when there's more than one agency involved. Now, all of a sudden, they share more openly. I believe that CISA has done a great job bringing technology together. And there's a forum that's out there where we actually share threat information into CISA and it's specific for things that they ask or see. And they're asking what all the different companies are seeing, right? So we share that data, not relative to any particular agency or company, but we put it in there for them to use, and then they put a brief out to the agencies. But that's kind of for the oh shit moment, right? When things are bad. Just in general, government agencies back and forth, I don't think they have a real good way to anonymize that information, sharing it back and forth. And the political environment is such that if they have something that occurs, they're going to pay a political penalty and they're going to call to the Hill. And so we don't encourage it as a political system. So I used to terse the fact that they didn't do it, but I understand and appreciate more now. They really can't. So we are causing our political environment is causing part of the problem there in anonymizing and being able to share that data. And then no one has common procedures, common protocols, common remedies. So that makes it a little more complex, right? Where a corporate entity gets to govern it and say, this is the way and this it's so. So those are the things that are at play. Do I think the government's better now than it was before? Yes. Is it equal to what a large corporation would be? No, it never will be, I don't believe. But I do think there's conscious effort to improve, and the ability is there to anonymize and share and for things to get a little bit better.
Yeah, that's more than a 5-minute answer on that one. That's more like a 40-hour graduate level course on ethics and morals and large organizations, and it's very complex. And maybe we'll get Tony Lauro to answer that question. He's so smart. Maybe he has the answer just like that, huh?
Yeah, he'll say something, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Rob, we're running out of time here. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Rob San Martin, AVP Public Sector at Akamai. Thank you, Rob.
John, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.